Good evening and welcome to Feheley Fine Arts' 21st Art Toronto celebration. I'm proud to say that for all 21 years, we have been delighted to present the best of contemporary Iqaluit art, and we're doing that again this year. What you see behind me and around me is an actual installation in the gallery, but it is only part of what we have. So I encourage you to go online and actually look at the other things that we have. But to get to what is the main event tonight, I am so delighted to present Laakkuluk Williamson Bathory, who is an extraordinary curator, visual artist, performance artist, and is also the artistic director of Iqaluit in Iqaluit. She has, for instance, she worked with the Art Gallery of Toronto 2 years ago on an exhibition of theirs. She has curated a number of things, but what we wanted to do tonight was to highlight her extraordinary performance. And what I'm going to do is just give you a brief introduction and then get out of the way. So what we have tonight is a performance by Laakkuluk, which is being broadcast live from her studio in Iqaluit. And after she has performed, she will be in conversation with Alyssa Procida, who is the executive director of the Inuit Art Foundation. Laakkuluk was the inaugural recipient of the Kanoyu Memorial Award, which is a very, very important award for emerging Inuit artists, and it's going to be given again this year. So anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Laakkuluk because that's what you're here for. And please enjoy the performance. It is going to be amazing.
Acknowledge the children. See their eyes, their hands, their feet. Listen to their heartbeats. Smell their breath. Acknowledge the fatherless children and see the passages of men. Acknowledge the children who died alone. See the loneliness. Acknowledge the frightened children and see the anger. Acknowledge the hungry children and see the ocean. Acknowledge the hurting children. See the vengeance. Acknowledge the cold children. See the broken seams. Acknowledge the homeless children and see the homelands. See the homelands. Delicate bones covered in moss. Noses nuzzling the ground, the air. Water trickling between stones, gills opening and closing. Small fingertips dip into freezing salt water. Wisps of tangled hair blast across wind-red faces. Little boots test the depths of puddles. Breast to mouth, hand to mouth, mouth to mouth. See the children. Iqaluit. sila taaktuin nagaluakpo. It is said to be a part of our reality that before there was light, there was only darkness. And people spent a long time inside, sitting on the sleeping bench and staring at each other in the eye. Sometimes this life of being inside, being in the dark, got to be too much. So much that people would decide to throw a party where all sorts of games were played. Games for men, for women, for boys, for girls. And one such game was called uaajeerneq. You see, a uaajeerneq, this lamp, it works with a long wick. And if you dampen that wick, all the light that comes out is just murky. A murky kind of light. We can't really see what is happening on the other side of the room. And you could only just barely make out what your own hands are doing. When they played uaajeerneq, the dimming of the lights game, any fantasy went. Any sexual fantasy you had, you were allowed to follow. You could swap spouses. You could change genders. You could even just sit in the middle of the room and tickle yourself with a feather. Any fantasy went. One woman noticed that over the years that she played the game, so many different people came to see her. But she developed a relationship with one. They knew each other completely inside and out. Every breath, every smell, every little muscle, they knew of one another. But she never knew who he was outside of the game. Because the rules of the game are that when the light becomes bright once more, you could not say, you could not make any notice, you couldn't hear, you couldn't mention a single thing that happened in the game. But this woman, she was full of foreboding, and she had to find out who this man was. So she waited until the next time they played. And she dipped her fingers into the lamp so that they were covered in black, oily soot. And sure enough, her lover came to her. And they touched and they squeezed and they licked and they pushed and they pulled and they did all the things that they have always done all of these years together. And she streaked her sooty fingers across his face so that he was marked. And sure enough, when the lights came back up, she saw him. She saw him. Her own brother streaked with soot across his face. She had to get away. She packed herself a bag and she made herself a torch, dipping it deep into the oil and lighting it so that it was bright, so that she could run across that dark tundra. And run she did. And her brother saw her disappear over the horizon. And he got himself just the smallest bit of light, barely anything at all. And he too took off across the tundra. Now these two, their run was so passionate that they began to lift off the ground. And the sister flew up into the sky and became Iqaluit, the sun. And the brother flew up into the sky and became uaajeerneq, the moon. The two of them are always running, but they will never, never meet. Iqaluit dakhilakpo. Sila dasilakpo. Imminu danitariaqartunga. Qummuqiviarlunga qaama takusarpa. Ta ullukku qummuqiviarlunga Iqaluit takusarpa. Massakku sila dasilakpo. Kisiani suli eqqarsartarpunga. Iqaluit aningaarlu pillu. Iqaluit aningaarlu. Iqaluit aningaarlu. Sumittu. Sumittu. Wangasi asuli pingwaktuina wanga. Asuli una pingwaktuina. Suisi ullumi. Suminganerlu sinaluaralunni. Sumittu siluni narua. Wanga naminak. Sinarsuaqartu. Suminganerlu sinaluaralunni. Kikkullu sinaluaralunni. Wanga imminu kisiani taatuunga. Imminu kisiani isinappunga. Wanga qernertuinangoorama kiinaga. Kiinaga qaqqortuinaagalorluni qernertuingoorpa. Acknowledge the children. See their eyes, their hands, their feet. Listen to their heartbeats. Smell their breath. Acknowledge the fatherless children and see the passages of men. Acknowledge the children who have died alone. Feel their loneliness. Acknowledge the frightened children and see the anger. Acknowledge the hungry children and see the ocean. Acknowledge the hurting children and see the vengeance. Acknowledge the cold children and see the broken seams. Acknowledge the homeless children and see the homelands. See the homelands. Delicate bones covered in moss. noses nuzzling the ground, the air, water trickling between stones, gills opening and closing. Small fingers dip into frigid sea water. Wisps of tangled hair whip past wind-red faces. Little boots test the depths of boots. Breast to mouth, hand to mouth, mouth to mouth. See the children. Uaajeerneq, thank you.
Uaajeerneq, thank you so much, Laakkuluk. That was unbelievable. Thank you. For those who don't know, my name is Alyssa Presida. I'm the Executive Director of the Inuit Art Foundation. We're the only national organization working to support Inuit artists in any discipline, anywhere throughout Canada. And we're so glad to be partnering with Feheley Fine Arts to present this performance today. Many of you will know Feheley Fine Arts as one of the most preeminent dealers of Inuit art in the country. What you may not know is that they also have a very long history of supporting performing artists like Laakkuluk. And so this is such a special opportunity to be together when we can't be together and to see such incredible performance straight from the north, which is kind of how it should be. Laakkuluk and I are going to talk a bit about her performance, but if you have questions, please do drop them in the chat and I will try to ask them. So again, Uaajeerneq, thank you so much, Laakkuluk. That was so incredible. I've had the real pleasure of seeing you perform before and to see a dress rehearsal of this performance. But even again, I get chills and it's so visceral, even through the screen and through so many miles away. For everyone who's viewing, would you like to talk a little bit about why you chose this piece? It's so resonant with today's lockdown and pandemic, and a little bit about your artistic practice.
Well, I named the piece Sila Book because that's exactly what is happening right now. The air is getting dark. And the word Sila actually means so many different things. It means the air, it means the environment, it means our intellect, it means the weather. So Sila Book, Sila is getting dark, the seasons are changing, and we're dealing with very serious things in our lives globally. And I just wanted to make sure that what we keep in mind is that it's the children. It's the people who are going to be living this life after us. We are the ancestors to come. And I just wanted people to keep that in mind while we are struggling with the pandemic and while we're finding ways of supporting Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, it's been, I'm sure, challenging for you also, and for everyone who's watching tonight. But it is such an important reminder, and the pandemic in some ways has been such an opportunity to think about how we care for one another, which I think is such an important part of your performance and in many ways your practice, which is very much about your body and embodying different feelings, right? So would you like to talk a little bit about your performance practice generally?
Yeah, sure. My artistic practice is very greasy at the moment. I've got oil all over me, all over everything, the oil. Anyway.
As the best performances do, right?
I'm always jealous of all these performers, these wonderful artists I get to work with, like Tanya Dagaphu, or any of the people from Give Up Returns. They leave the stage and they're done, and it takes me hours to wash my face and recombobulate my body. But yeah, my practice is based in uaajeerneq, which is the mass dance that I attempted to do for you, and it is a trans-customary performance that existed in pre-Christian times in Greenland and also in this peri-colonial time that we're living in now. It needed revitalization in the 70s, and I guess I'm really the second generation of Inuit artists who have taken up uaajeerneq as a part of our practices. It's a performance that requires me as a performer to be challenged, and it requires audiences also to be challenged about notions of humility, of fear, of sexuality, of acceptance, of joy and sadness, and all the different emotions that can be present in a room in any moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. We have a question from the audience that I think is timely. As you're exploring your uaajeerneq practice and thinking about bringing these emotions to the forefront, how do you choose what stories to tell, and how do you get your inspiration?
I wanted to make sure to use the qutluk today. It's in the first place. Look at this beautiful light. I wanted to be able to share it with you, and it is such an essential part of our culture. It's our hearth, and so that sort of became the center of what is really a series of improvised decisions that I make. And what I always tell my collaborators and young Inuit that are training in the performing arts is that improvisation is actually a very difficult skill that we as Inuit are trained in from our infanthood. And it's a necessary skill when we're out on the land, when we're hunting, when we're dealing with different environmental situations. This idea of thinking on our feet is extremely important. So I made the qutluk the center of the performance, and the idea that Sheila is changing, and that we have these celestial beings that have very difficult stories within them to challenge us. And then it made me realize that we must acknowledge the children.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so incredible. You are also the artistic director of Iqaluit, which is an organization based in Iqaluit that supports the performing arts among Inuit throughout Inuit Nunavut and beyond. One of the ways that some of the people here may have seen you is that you directed, I think, Give Up Returns. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, which was an incredible performance. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what it's like creating performing artistic work in the North. I know that one of the biggest initiatives is to create a uaajeerneq, or a performing arts venue.
That's right, yes. I mean, Canada gets so much identity in itself from the idea that we are a northern nation. And so Inuit art has really ignited Canadian imagination about themselves. And it's really when it comes down to it, Inuit art, I mean, the idea of us making art and us hunting are the two things that have allowed us to always thrive in this Arctic place and thrive through many difficult colonial situations. So we're artistic people, we're artistic hunting people. And so making art is a part of daily life, but we don't have the infrastructure for it. All the performances in the Arctic take place in school gyms, in hotel foyers, in dark little rooms like this. And so when we do things like rehearse for Give Up Returns that got presented at the Tarragon Theatre last year, we were renting space from the soup kitchen. Between meals, we would have a stage taped out on the floor, actors would do their thing, and then we'd have to pack up quickly before the next meal was served. So this pandemic is especially difficult on Inuit performing artists because we no longer have access to the performing arts venues that the rest of Canada have.
Mm-hmm. And we've been very lucky tonight that the internet has cooperated, but it does not always.
It was a little bit touch and go. I got the signal just before the Zoom call went on. We have a weak signal. Like, oh no.
We're keeping our fingers and toes crossed. It worked out. And so, but it sounds like that's incredibly challenging. But as you said, there's such a long history of performing arts in the North, and it's such an important part of Inuit identity and artistic identity. And so carving out those spaces to create is so critical. You have, as Pat said, won the inaugural Uaajeerneq Memorial Award from the IF, but also just this year, the Sinchi Foundation also awarded you very fine honors. And so I'm wondering if you might talk a little bit about the importance of that kind of support for performing artists in the North in particular, to have space to really create and focus on their work.
Yeah, in the first place, being so closely associated with uaajeerneq in being a recipient of the award named after her was such a huge honor. She was such a humble woman who spoke Inuktitut and traveled the entire world without speaking a word of English. And her artistic practice was nestled amongst an entire life of providing for her family, of hunting and camping and sewing. And so to be associated with somebody as brilliant as her is just incredible for me. It's something that I aspire to in my life. And then the funding itself was such a gift because it allowed me to create a piece of art that I had complete self-determination over. It was a project that I owned, that I shared with my collaborators, and that I had control of. It's an incredibly important thing for Inuit artists to have that, when there are so many different institutions that take all sorts of different types of ownership away from us. To be able to create art that we own and direct ourselves is so important. So yeah, I was able to collaborate with loved ones. We created a show that was a part of Abiticonia at the National Gallery of Canada, and we performed it at the Harbourfront. And then the pandemic put everybody to sleep.
But I just saw that you're on the cover of the Abiticonia exhibition catalog, so that's pretty exciting.
Isn't that incredible? So that is the gift of Uaajeerneq Memorial Award, is that it went all the way to the cover of this beautiful book of artists.
Yeah, it really is incredible, her legacy and continued impact on artists and all of us who love her work so much. Talked a bit about how the pandemic made us all go to sleep. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what the experience has been like in Iqaluit. I know that thankfully Nunavut has been reasonably COVID-19 free, thankfully, but obviously there's been impacts on artists in particular.
Oh yes, yeah. We're the only region of North America that hasn't had a single case of COVID, so we're incredibly lucky. And nobody, I mean, the government of Nunavut is taking no chances, and we have a very stringent quarantine system, so that if any of us leave the territory, we have to spend 2 weeks under guard at a quarantine hub in the south. So it means that there's no more touring, there's no more in-person collaborations, there's no more access to space. But I really do think of this time, the reason why I said it's put us to sleep is that it is dreaming time. It is the time for artists to really go back to our roots, go to where we get great comfort, where we garner knowledge from. And so for me, it has been the blessing of being in this dream time has been for me to be with my 3 children, with my husband at our cabin down the bay, fishing from nets right in front of our cabin, shooting seals, eating and nourishing ourselves both, physically and spiritually and socially with the work of our own hands. And that has given me such assurance to the way I want to proceed as an artist.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful that we have safety and that we have dream time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also thankful that you have safety and dream time. I'm wondering, what have you been dreaming about? Do you have an idea of what your next project might be, or if you're working on something specific that you could tell us about?
Yeah, actually, I do have a project that came from an actual dream. I would like to start working very soon on a dance film that looks at the movements, the everyday movements we do to bring our cultural, our community life to life. So the motions of taking fat off seal skins, the motions of eating with your knife, and turning it into a choreography. It's something that I dreamt about, and now it's a dream that's about to come true.
That's amazing. I absolutely cannot wait to see it. We talked about how Cubic Returns had traveled throughout the South, and you got to perform at the National Gallery. Once things are safe, and you've made your film about dance, are you looking forward to any more tours or performing throughout the country again?
I think we have to go through it. It's not going to be simple like that. It's not going to be like turn the lights on in the theaters. We're really going to have to work hard to regenerate all sorts of different parts of the arts economy in order to be able to step back into the theater. So I'm looking forward to doing that hard work. Here at Iqaluit, I'm starting a series of artisan residencies so that Inuit artists can do exactly this thing of sitting and dreaming and incubating projects, so that by the time the pandemic is over, we can start going into development and production in all sorts of different directions.
Yeah, that's incredible. And so important, like you were saying, for artists to have those opportunities. And it's so wonderful that Iqaluit can help provide them. Just nearing time, and I don't want to take up too much of yours. So I know that you're going to close us out. But before we do that, I just want to say so thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's been lovely, and I always love spending time with you. If I could, I'll just turn the Iqaluit off quietly, and everybody can watch that, and that'll be the end.
That sounds great. Thank you.